Welcome everyone, and I'm Niamh O'Connor, the Chair of ALPSP, and I'm really delighted to welcome all of you to our annual meeting. So as a first step, you can see, I hope, on your screen the Zoom webinar details. So I'll just read through this quickly. And if you have any technical issues during the session and need some assistance, please use the question box to let us know. So those are my kind of formal announcements. Normally they would take the form of telling you where to find things if we were in a physical space. So that's the stand-in replacement. But I am really delighted that so many of you have been able to join us in our conference and for our keynote session this evening. I expect we're going to have a really exciting session with our awards and our keynote speaker, Sherri Aldis, Chief of United Nations Publications, speaking to us about the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm really looking forward to hearing Sherri's talk and to all of our sessions over the next couple of days. Before we begin, I want to thank the people without whom this conference wouldn't be possible. Our sponsors, the Publishers License Society, Atapon, Silverchair, Wiley, Access Innovations, Aries, Copyright Clearance Centre, Denta, Delta Think, and KGL. Your support is vital to us being able to run this meeting, and we really appreciate the support that you've shown. I also want to say a really special thank you to our programme committee members. This year has been a particularly challenging one for all of us, and the unexpected events of the last 6 months have meant that, like many others, we've had to change the format of our meeting. And this has also resulted in changes in the programme committee for the meeting. But I really do want to thank everyone who has engaged with this process along the way, to everyone who contributed and suggested ideas for sessions, not all of which we've been able to accommodate this year due to our format, but we really appreciate the effort that you put in, and we do hope to be able to come back next year and take up many of the suggestions that you have provided. I want to give special thanks to the 6 people who've put together the format that you're going to enjoy over the next couple of days. So really special thanks go to Sarah Greaves, Rohina Anand, to Sarah Grimme, Nikhil Patel, Simon Holt, Nancy Roberts, and Manisha Bellina for putting together what I hope is going to be a really exciting programme. I also want to say a special thank you to the ALPSP team, particularly to Leslie Ogg, Susie Brown, Ruth Layton, and to our CEO, Wayne Syme, for all of the work that you and the team have done in getting us here today and putting the conference together under quite challenging circumstances. And of course, thank you to Chloe from CCC, who is our Zoom and tech expert for this evening, and without whom we definitely wouldn't be here this evening. The ALPS conference has been a highlight of our year since the first conference took place in 2008. And through our activities, we aim to foster a culture that will strengthen and advance academic and scholarly publishing in all of its forms. ALPSP is your organisation, and as the chair, I really want to encourage you to take part and participate and to make it the organisation that you want it to be. If you're not already kind of involved or participating, please do have a look on the website. You can find all of the contact details for the ALPS team there, and they'd be really delighted to hear from you, whether you want to share an idea or you want to get involved, or you're always welcome to contact me. You can find me at PLOS. And I will be happy to follow up with you as well. And so with that, I want to take us on to what I think is going to be a really great session. And for those of you joining us tomorrow and Friday, a great opening for our conference. Remember from what I've just said about being able to submit questions during the Q&A, using the Q&A feature. And please do also remind yourselves of our code of conduct for the meeting, because open discussion and participation is what we really want to be able to have while being respectful of differences of opinion and that diverse range of experiences and perspectives that really makes the conference what we all enjoy. Also, if you'd like to tweet, remember our hashtag is ALPSP 2020. And with that, I will hand over to David Summer to introduce our award winners. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Niamh, and good evening and welcome to everybody. And thank you again to the PLS, who are our very generous sponsors of the awards this year. So welcome to you from wherever you're joining us. Some of you will be joining us from your kitchens. Some of you may be dialing in from your garden sheds, and some of you will be relaxing in your hot tubs. You know who you are. So I won't keep you in suspense much longer, but first of all, I would like to acknowledge our panel of judges. These are the people that join me this year on the judging committee. So we have Kumar Bowling from Siam, Ian Craig from Wiley, Astrid Engelin-Visser from iOS Press, Lorraine Estelle from Counter, Richard Geddy, consultant, Athena Hupner from University of Central Florida, Robert Ianello from ARM Education Media, Andrea Powell from Research for Life, and David Smith from the IET. And if you were here last week for the awards flash sessions for the finalists, you would have seen presentations from all 8 of our finalists, and I think you'll hopefully agree that they are all worthy finalists. If you weren't there for that session, I'll just quickly summarize each of the awards in 30 seconds each. So we had Word to EPUB from the DAISY Consortium, which is a free tool to create EPUB publications with built-in accessibility features which facilitate use by people with disabilities. We had Charlesworth WeChat Gateway, which provides STM publishers with the ability to integrate their back-end systems into WeChat to create engaging experience for authors in China. We heard from Select Crowd Review, which is an interactive and safe way to improve the quality and speed of publishing using the mechanisms of social media. We had Open Library of Humanities, which is a sustainable scholar-led consortia funding model for gold open access in the humanities without publication fees. We heard from Scholasy, which applies machine learning to extract structured data and knowledge summaries from scholarly content, helping researchers manage information overload. We heard from DataSeer, which guides researchers through the data sharing process for their manuscripts, allowing journals and their funders to have consistent and enforceable data sharing policies. We heard from Jus Mundi, which is a multilingual search engine for international law, and it provides legal researchers with worldwide access to build their comprehensive international legal knowledge. And then we heard from Rigor and Transparency Index, powered by SciScore, which is an automated reviewer scored over 1 million papers, which detects which of the rigor and transparency criteria authors addressed. So quite a difficult choice for the judges, as you can imagine, but it is now time to reveal our winner. So while all 8 finalists impressed the judges and scored highly, this year the judges have agreed that there are 2 joint winners and 1 highly commended award. So 2 joint winners and 1 highly commended award. So we'll start off with the highly commended award. The 2020 highly commended award goes to Open Library of Humanities. Many congratulations to Open Library of Humanities. And I think Martin Paul Eve can join us now. Martin, if you want to unmute yourself. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear. Many congratulations on being highly commended. So how does it feel?
Yeah, no, that's great. I joked in the panelist chat that I had my Oscars dressed on and had prepared a comprehensive list of thanks like some actress diva, but I didn't think we'd actually win nothing. So it's fantastic. And I'd just like to thank all the great people I work with on OLH, Rose Harris-Bertel, Andy Byers, Maurice Sanchez, and Paula Clement Vega in particular. The trustees who run OLH and keep it legal, Michael Collins, Hilary Fraser and Richard Hall, and my co-founder, Caroline Edwards. But no, it's really thrilling to have this award, the highly commended status. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Well, many congratulations. And what does it mean for you? What does this open up for you?
Oh, well, it means that we're now recognised by a professional publishing body, so we must be real, as opposed to just a little hobbyist project on the side that we came up with one day at the University of Lincoln. No, it's sort of fantastic. Next fortnight is the 5th anniversary of the launch of OLH. So to have this official recognition is really a great milestone for us, and I'm absolutely thrilled. Thank you.
Well, very well done, Martin. And the judges were very impressed. So congratulations on being highly commended. Okay, so it's now time then to reveal our two joint winners. So they're joint, they're equally worthy, and I will reveal them one at a time in no particular order. So ladies and gentlemen, the first of our joint winners of the 2020 ALPS Award for Innovation in Publishing is Jus Mundi. Many congratulations to Jus Mundi, the international legal database. And I'm hoping Jean-Remy Demestre might be able to join us. Jean-Remy, are you there? Were you able to dial in?
Hey, David, can you see me and
We
hear me?
can see you loud and clear. Yes, you're looking very
Okay.
clear. And congratulations on being a winner. How does it feel?
So thank you very much. It's a huge pleasure to be a winner, and thank you, for selecting us, for listening to us. It was really a pleasure to meet you and the rest of the jury. So thank you very much. It's really important to us.
Great. And what does it mean for the team at Jus Mundi? I mean, international law doesn't often get the recognition perhaps it deserves. So what does it mean for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what came to my mind. I think it's a recognition for us that, international law and the accessibility of international law is important beyond the world of international lawyers. So many thanks. And I also want to say that, we try to do our best to reach the industry standard and to be recognized by the ALPSP is very important to us. And so, as you can guess, I want to thank all our team, which is working hard on this project, but also our partner, Brill, who is believing in us since the beginning, and so especially Jasmine Lange and Marie Sheldon from Brill.
Excellent. Well, many congratulations, Jean-Remy. Thank you very much for joining us. And one of our winners tonight, Jus Mundi, which translates as justice for all, I think is the translation. Okay, so on to the second of our two winners tonight. So ladies and gentlemen, the second of our joint winners of the 2020 ALPS Award for Innovation in Publishing is Word to EPUB from the DAISY Consortium. Many congratulations to Word to EPUB, and I think Richard Orme can join us. Richard, are you there?
I am here, and I apologise for not being in a hot tub.
That's all right. You can later. You can join the hot tub.
But thank you so much for this award. Many different publications have been created using the tool that we developed, including a humorous blog, which was published as an ebook, and even soup recipes. But the inspiration for this tool was always academic and educational publishing. And at this time of COVID, education materials are being produced and digitized into accessible files that are a lifeline to students with disabilities who are unable to study at school. This is SDG 4 in action, all about inclusive and equitable quality education, which no doubt we'll be hearing about in the keynote after this session. Thank you so much for recognizing our work.
You're very welcome. And how does it feel?
It feels fantastic. When you mentioned the other awards, I was thinking, okay, well, it's nice to be in the finalists. So it's wonderful to receive this recognition from your organization. It's been important to us to have the opportunity to present to the panel, to showcase the tool in the lightning sessions, and also to be here for the award itself. I've been so impressed by the innovations showcased by all the finalists, and we're really humbled that you picked this initiative from our non-profit organization as one of the winners. It's going to be a huge boost to the team that's responsible for developing the tool, but also for submitting translations and creating training materials and so on. We've got lots of plans to develop the tool further, with a particular emphasis on support for more languages and for math and chemistry content. So having this recognition behind us will be really helpful as we develop our plans forward, and just a big boost in the arm. Thank you so much to all of the awards panel.
Excellent. Well, many congratulations, Richard. Very well deserved. Excellent. Okay, so that just about wraps up the awards for this year. A big thank you again to our judges. Thank you to the almost 40 different submissions we had. Congratulations to all 8 finalists. Well done to Open Library of Humanities on being highly commended, and many congratulations to our 2 winners tonight, Jus Mundi and Word to EPUB from the DAISY Consortium. So we'll look forward to receiving your Innovation Award entries next year for the 2021 awards. It's never too early to start thinking about what you might submit. But that's it from me, David Summer. Thank you very much to everybody, and I'll now hand back over to Manisha. Thank you very much.
So thank you, David, and well done to all of the award winners. Hello and good afternoon, good evening, and I suppose good morning to everyone, depending on where you are in the world. I'm Manisha Bellina and I'm from UNO, and it is a true honour to chair this keynote session, especially as it's my first time. So before we begin, a couple of things to note. We encourage you to familiarise yourself with all these features so you can actively participate in the discussions and share your questions. It is now my absolute pleasure to hand over to Sarah Folder, Chief Executive of Publishers Licensing Services, who are the platinum sponsors, to introduce our keynote. So over to you, Sarah.
Good. Thank you so much, Manisha. As you have heard, I'm Sarah Folder, Chief Executive of Publishers Licensing Services, and I'm delighted that PLS is the platinum sponsor of this year's ALPSP Virtual Conference and Awards. And I'm only sorry not to be seeing you all in person and gathered in Manchester. Let's just hope we don't have to wait too much longer before we have that pleasure again. PLS, for some of you who don't know, exists to ensure that the value of your publications is widely recognised through efficient and effective copyright and licensing services that enable access to your content. ALPSP is one of our 4 members, helping to guide our work on behalf of the publishing industry. Last year, for example, we distributed £38.6 million to some 4,000 publishers from collective licensing alone. We're finding that increasing numbers of publishers are finding our permissions service cuts out the admin burden of clearing rights. And finally, I just want to mention that we established and host the Access to Research service, which provides free access to academic and scholarly publications in public libraries, an important stepping stone for publishers on the road to open access. So this evening, it's an enormous pleasure to be introducing your keynote speaker. Sherri Aldis's 2 passions in life, books and international living, are a perfect fit for her UN role as Chief of United Nations Publications, a position she has held for over 5 years. Born in the UK and educated in Canada, she embarked on her career by opening a bookshop in Paris's Quartier Latin. Her first role in publishing was managing international rights at Éditions du Chêne in Hachette Livre. She gained wide publishing experience over 15 years at Hachette. Her work in latter years took her to Tunisia for 3 years, where she and her young family lived through the Arab Spring, an experience that in part inspired her move to the UN. Sherri oversees the publishing activities and policies of the United Nations and supports its communications priorities and campaigns, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, which she'll be talking about this evening. And so she brings some of the knowledge that the UN creates to the people who need to read it. So without further ado, let's hear from Sherri. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah. And I'd like to thank ALPSP for inviting me to speak today. It is a true honor to be with you. And particularly, I would like to thank Manisha and Neve for being the chairs and co-chairs of this session. I'm going to try and share my screen. I hope that you can see the wonderful Sustainable Development Goals. So welcome to each and every one of you who are participating from around the world today. It would have been much nicer if I could see you all in person to actually see your faces and hear the coffee cups clinking, maybe at this time in Europe, even champagne glasses. But this is our new normal. I think that we're mostly used to it now. I know how intense it is to go from video call to video call all day. And then I appreciate all the more you're taking the time to participate today virtually. I suppose the advantage of doing it like this, other than the reducing the carbon footprint, which is near and dear to all of us, is that many more people can participate than usual and share our experiences and learn from what looks to be an excellent program for this year's conference. So I'm honored to have been asked to speak to you today. I'm sort of an outsider to the learned and society publishing world. As Sarah mentioned, I do come from a commercial bookselling and publishing background, and I'm still considered a newcomer at the United Nations after 5 years of heading up UN publications. And I am very fortunate to work for not only such an inspiring and important organization, but to have a job that combines my love of bookselling and publishing with my passion for global issues. On a daily basis, I oversee not only the sales and marketing of some 500 UN publications, but in multiple languages, which is also very important to me, but also the UN bookshops. So we have a bookshop in New York and in Geneva. So I think I really do have the best job in publishing, and maybe even the best job at the UN. I started my career at the UN just as the SDGs were being negotiated in the organization's 70th year. They have become the ever-present thread in our daily work, our main focus and priority. They're ambitious, they're egalitarian, and they're inclusive. They were negotiated by all of our countries and agreed to in the very grandiose General Assembly Hall. But it is up to all of us, governments, but also civil society and private sector in our personal and professional capacity to work towards achieving them. So I'm therefore very happy to speak to this group in particular today. You are a key constituency in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals over the next 10 years. We have 10 years left. We call this the Decade of Action. So in these 10 years, we need to achieve the ambitious goals that we've set out for ourselves. As you all know, we are currently living in an exceptional and very worrying time with the coronavirus pandemic. It has caused us to lose ground in achieving some of these goals, and I will share some details about this later in the presentation. But instead of being discouraged by this situation, as our Secretary General has said, you can see on the screen, he continues to say, we need to look at this as an opportunity to transform this moment into a turning point and give new impetus to our efforts towards attaining our goals. And you are uniquely placed to contribute to this effort in 3 major ways. First of all, by contributing directly to the SDGs through corporate social responsibility measures and sustainable business practices. Secondly, by accelerating progress and acting as true agents of change through publishing content on and in support of the SDGs. And thirdly, by conducting, financing, and publishing the multidisciplinary, large-scale research that is needed to nourish policy decisions and challenge assumptions. So I'll speak for about 35 minutes or so today before we open it up to your questions and a more interactive discussion. I'm sure that most of you know what the SDGs are. According to a survey done in 2019 by the World Economic Forum, which is Davos, 74% of adults globally are aware of the SDGs. I'm also fairly sure that you're actively working with them and publishing books on them. But I will nevertheless give you a short overview of the goals before looking at what they mean for publishing both by you and the UN and what we can do together to achieve them. Of course, all of this is impacted today by COVID-19. It has become our new reality, and we have all had to incorporate this into our work, from our own personal work habits and environments, to our publishing workflows and what we publish. It has also impacted the SDGs, and it does provide an opportunity to take stock of where we are and what the gap is, and hopefully to give us an even firmer resolve to work together to make sure we take action now to make significant progress by 2030. I also hope to give you a small window into the United Nations, lifting the curtains a little bit onto what we do and how we work, and maybe even inspire and encourage you to participate actively with us in achieving the SDGs. And just before starting, I want to commit, or try to commit, to not using any acronyms. I'll do my best to avoid them, with the exception of SDGs, but I've probably said it about 20 times now, so I think you all know that I'm referring to the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm going to show you a very short, just over a minute video as an introduction to the goals. before heading into the next phase of our presentation today. So hopefully that gave you a short overview of what the goals are. And I don't want to go into a comprehensive history of how the goals came about, but I think that it would be useful to have just a few facts to provide some context. So it all started with the quite revolutionary concept at the time of the Millennium Development Goals, which ended in 2015. So this idea of global cooperation towards reducing poverty and inequalities was expanded with the SDGs. We needed a new agenda to guide us from 2015 to 2030 and for all 193 member states of the UN. We needed an agenda that took into account the current state of the planet, where tackling climate change is essential for sustainable development and poverty eradication. Discussions started as early as 2012 at the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, which is also known as Rio+20, and then 2 years later in January 2015, the General Assembly began the very complicated and delicate negotiation process. They involved the 193 UN member states, intergovernmental committees of international experts, and civil society. It really was a major global consultation to determine what the goals should be and what to measure progress against. You can imagine that getting 193 countries with differing points of view and priorities to agree to 17 goals with 169 indicators common to all was a true feat of diplomacy and a milestone success of multilateralism. There are many anecdotes about the process behind the scenes and some excellent books that I can recommend if you'd like to learn more. So in addition to the SDGs, 2015 really was a landmark year for multilateralism and international policy shaping. In addition to the Sustainable Development Goals and several other treaties that were signed that year, there was the major Paris Agreement on Climate Change, which was signed in December and bookended 2015. In just 9 days, it will be the 5th anniversary already of the SDGs. And this Friday, the 18th of September, there will be a very impressive SDG moment with the Secretary General and the General Assembly to set the tone for the coming decade of action, which will be launched on Friday formally. And so here they are, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So there's 17 goals to transform the world, a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and improve the lives and prospects of everyone, everywhere. So we have the goals, there are 17, we have our 169 targets, and we have to track them. How do we figure out if we've made progress or not, with all of the hugely diverse range of actors contributing to them around the world? So we developed the Global Indicator Framework for Sustainable Development Goals. This was developed by the Interagency and Expert Group on SDG indicators. Obviously, it's not a static set of indicators. It is refined annually to make sure that it still remains relevant and workable. And it's even reviewed comprehensively every 5 years to make sure that it is also relevant on a local level. It's complemented by indicators at the regional and national levels, which are developed by member states. So that's the framework. But in addition to that, we really need some in-person contact. So every year at the United Nations in July, we host the annual high-level political forum on sustainable development. This year, of course, it wasn't in person, but we still hosted it virtually, because it is very important to have a place where countries and participants can come together and discuss. So this is the global forum for providing political leadership, guidance, and recommendations on implementing the SDGs. Countries, the United Nations, other intergovernmental organizations, civil society, and businesses all share the efforts that they are taking to achieve the SDGs, to look at what's working and what is not at the global, regional, national, and local levels. And of course, this process is supported by books. So there are two main ones. There are many books about the SDGs, and we'll look at that in a bit, but the two main ones that we publish are an annual SDG progress report produced by the United Nations, and then there's a quadrennial global sustainable development report that has been prepared by a group of independent scientists, and both of which, of course, we publish. So we have this ambitious and inclusive sustainable development agenda. We have clear targets and indicators, and we have the tools to track them. How do we share all of this knowledge with stakeholders, academics, and curious members of the general public? Well, we publish it. We publish it online, we publish it in print, we publish it in the UN's 6 official and many other languages. We publish it on UN platforms with our partners and in commercial channels. We also promote it. We promote it with official launch events or events at our bookshop. We promote it on social media, and by relying on all of the international media channels who follow the UN's work. And you publish it too. More and more learned and scholarly publishers are participating in and contributing to the vast pool of knowledge around the SDGs. There are a few examples of digital resources dedicated to the SDGs on the screen. I'm sure there are many more. I apologize if I haven't included yours, and would love it if you could please share any others with me. I'm very interested to learn about them. Now I'd like to look a little bit more about what the SDGs mean for scholarly publishing and research, and how does the UN integrate them into its own research and publishing programs. So publishers quickly saw that the SDGs, first and foremost, were a publishing opportunity. They're an opportunity to generate revenue and to respond to market interest. We know that 74% of people around the world have heard of the SDGs, so that really does create an opportunity. Publishers also saw that contributions from the scholarly community in particular were needed in order to achieve them. They also saw that they aligned well with the values and the objectives of many learned and society publishers in particular. And, you know, for all of us, I think it's quite clearly the right thing to do. That's a very simple explanation for why we would like to participate more. So challenge or action-based or action-focused research is increasingly engaged in by the academic community. This research makes a measurable difference in society. And this action-oriented approach syncs very nicely with the UN's focus on action to achieve the SDGs. There's an excellent paper on this by Philippa Grand called Challenge-Led Research Practices in Publishing. So this is in an environment where there's increased political engagement by youth. And since many of them are university students, there's therefore more pressure on institutions to act in a very positive way. Having several children from Generation Z myself, I'm well aware that they are very keen on accountability by institutions such as universities and governments, but also personally. Activism is extremely important to them, actions and not just words. They are very tech savvy and excellent digital communicators. Many times I think my children are just lying in bed on their phones and then learn they've drummed up 10,000 signatures on a petition in support of diversity in school curricula, or they've organized a community solidarity march. And in this context, where you have the researchers, the publishers, and the audience all galvanized in the same direction, it provides not only a forward movement, but also creates a market. It is a potent combination, and it can be amplified. This potential for amplification also resides within the goals themselves. Some of the areas where publishers impact the SDGs directly also have direct impact on others. For example, as was mentioned during the awards ceremony, SDG 4 is a very obvious contribution that publishing makes to quality education. And education has a positive effect on SDG number 1, no poverty, because obviously better educated people have a better chance of making decent lives for themselves and their families and raising them out of poverty. The SDGs are interrelated and the impact is therefore multiplied. Even small acts can contribute to achieving the goals, and publishing content on them is a very concrete way to do so. At the United Nations, the SDGs are a core part of our work and therefore our publishing program. The UN system is vast and extremely diverse, with 25 departments at the UN Secretariat, about 25 agencies, funds, and programs, many related institutions. The UN family has a lot of specialized knowledge in economics and social affairs, peace and security, human rights, and sustainable development. Before, when we took planes, and hopefully we will again, you were able to do so safely because of UN regulations of civil aviation. If you have a cell phone, I'm sure we all do, you can use it thanks to standards that were also developed by the UN. And copyright, which is a topic near and dear to all of us here, is subject to international law that was created by the UN. It really is part of all of our daily lives, even if we're not always aware of it. The experts who work within this system do research individually and collectively. They collate statistics and data from 193 member states. They work with academics, they work with institutions to create a very wide-ranging body of knowledge. This content is made into online databases, websites, reports, working papers, policy briefs, parliamentary documents, and flagship publications by the author departments themselves. It is in digital format and sometimes printed as well, although less and less for environmental reasons, as well as for reasons of audience and budgetary cuts as well, of course. It's often available in up to 6 official languages. We publish in Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish, and sometimes even more than just the official languages. We have a publishing policy for the UN Secretariat that we desperately try to ensure everybody adheres to, but otherwise the editorial work is done entirely by each author department. So it's not done by my section, which is called UN Publications. There is a lot of interagency cooperation and cross-cutting agreements to share and publish data or publications. We share data with the OECD, for example, on international trade statistics to ensure that it is as complete in terms of range of countries and sectors covered as possible. Much of the World Bank data actually uses UN statistics, and there are many other examples of cooperation on content, on best practices, on technology and tools. These are long-standing and very strong relationships that exist for the common good. I've personally been involved in a major publishing cooperation with the OECD. We started working together in 2015 to create the first aggregated platform for UN content. Previously, UN content had been dispersed all over the internet in as many places as there are agencies or departments. And bringing this huge body of work together in a consistent way was a Herculean task that we achieved together. And the UN iLibrary has become an important research tool and a simple user-friendly gateway into a very complex body of work. You can see the home screen on the slide now. And this cooperation has been extended to the SDG Pathfinder, which is also on the screen. And this explores the key topics behind the SDGs and the connections between them through analysis and data from 6 international organizations, including the UN, and it uses artificial intelligence to do so. I think that you probably all know this platform because it recently won the inaugural University Press Redux Sustainability Award that was launched by you at ALPSP and Cambridge University Press. It's really another great example of contributing to the SDGs in a very concrete way by recognizing an initiative aimed at addressing one or more of the 17 SDGs. So at the United Nations, we currently have almost 9,000 titles related to the SDGs and have published 228 so far in 2020. What you can see on this slide is the number of titles we've published so far in 2020 by SDG. One of the innovations that we've introduced in the past couple of years is tagging all of the content that we publish by SDG. Each publication or series has up to 3 SDGs attributed to it, and we surface this in our biannual catalog and in the new version of the UN iLibrary, which we are launching in January 2021. And it will be one of the search facets that users will be able to use to access our content. Now, these are only the titles that we select to publish commercially. There are many more working papers, policy briefs, documents, brochures, tools for communication that are produced by the UN to inform policymakers and researchers around the world that we don't distribute commercially. Maybe I can share a few words on that. So you can imagine when I first arrived at the UN, how surprised I was, maybe even shocked, coming from the commercial publishing world, when I learned that all of the books that I was now in charge of selling to generate revenue for the UN were actually available for free. I didn't know how to really wrap my head around that. They were sometimes even available in print for free. Quite quickly, I found the answer is that the way that we find a market for these is to add value to that free content. We add value by aggregating it to make it easy to find. We add services and formats that aren't available for free. Print, for example, people easily understand that they have to pay for print, but that was a major challenge when I first arrived. So the work of my section, that's what we call what we do at the United Nations, my section is called UN Publications, is to maximize dissemination of the UN's work while generating revenue for the organization. So we do that by finding niches in the market that are not covered by free dissemination that's done by the author departments. So the author departments create the content and then they disseminate it on their websites. So we add value, as I mentioned before, to the publications, and we do this in several ways. First and foremost, we create proper metadata and we attribute identifiers to the content. We adhere to publishing standards in order to render the content discoverable and make the publications available. We also ensure that it's available wherever people may be looking for it or discoverable where they may not. That means Google, Amazon, library distributors, aggregators, as well as our own online platforms and physical points of sale. That's our bookshop that you can see on the slide there. We also create accessible EPUB editions for persons with disabilities, as many of you do as well. This is a very important function for us at the United Nations. So we have prioritized doing that for the core documents and as many of the major flagships that we can every year. We've also created and maintained digital platforms that aggregate the content in a user-friendly way to make it easier for libraries to consume, for example, with the metadata and content in the UN iLibrary, and for the general public to search and purchase on our e-commerce site that you can see on this slide, which is called shopunn.org. Another very important role we play is in advising the author departments on publishing best practices, on issues related to copyright, but also design and marketing. We participate very actively by creating launch events. We tie into UN-wide priorities and communications campaigns to really broaden and strengthen the messaging and impact of all of this knowledge that is created. We also do actively edit content in UN publications. We write, edit, and design 2 to 5 books every year for the general public or for children. All of these books are in line with the UN's priorities and are very carefully chosen to publish by UN publications. So we recently published a book for children during the COVID-19 crisis to accompany families and children who were living from home, working from home, studying at home, and seeing everything from their window. So we found the quite whimsical title, I think, From My Window, Children at Home During COVID-19, which is a lovely book. And then we also very recently published the United Nations Guide to Model UN, which is actually on the screen. And that's the first official guide on this very popular subject that I'm sure many of you know young people who participate in. And we also enter into partnerships with publishers to increase reach even more in markets and for target audiences that we are less well placed to reach. So working with others helps to amplify the effect of our efforts to raise awareness on the SDGs. This can be and often is with academic publishers, of course, but it's just as important to educate children on the SDGs, because in 2030, this world will be theirs, they will be in charge of society, and so energizing and informing them now about what it should look like is a very important priority for the UN. So we've therefore developed some strategic publishing partnerships to increase awareness of and engagement with the SDGs across various target audiences. So one very strong example is the SDG Book Club. So we created this for children aged 6 to 12 with the International Publishers Association, the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions, the International Board on Books for Young People, the European and International Booksellers Federation, and the Bologna Children's Book Fair. We also co-publish books. So here you have the cover of 17 Ways to Save the World, which we just published with Hachette in the UK. And we also cooperate with publishers such as Kids Can Press in Canada to do online readings with authors of books from the SDG Book Club. So Iqbal and his ingenious idea is a great example of that. And we host the videos on our YouTube channel, and we even organized in-person events when that was still possible. Many of these activities, of course, have been adapted to the new situation that we're currently in with the coronavirus pandemic. So, COVID-19 and the SDGs. As we all know all too well, COVID-19 is spreading human suffering, it's destabilizing the global economy, and it's upending the lives of people everywhere. It's laid bare as nothing else really has, the deep inequalities that have existed and continue to exist. So we're really faced with a choice right now. We can choose to leverage this crisis when the usual policies and social norms have been disrupted to shift to a more sustainable economy that works for both people and the planet. And the good news is we already have the roadmap. It's called the SDGs. So I wanted to just run through a few examples, concrete examples, of how COVID-19 is affecting progress on the SDGs. So first of all, on SDG number 1, no poverty, we were already off track to end poverty by 2030. And with COVID, an extra 71 million people have been pushed into poverty. SDG 2 on zero hunger, food insecurity was already on the rise, but COVID has created an additional threat to food systems, which the executive director of the World Food Program has said could lead to a hunger pandemic. So we already have a health pandemic, we could have a hunger pandemic. SDG number 4 on quality education. Progress towards inclusive and equitable quality education was already too slow, but school closures due to COVID have kept 90% of all students out of school. SDG number 5 on gender equality. Despite improvements, full gender equality remains unreached, and COVID lockdowns have increased violence against women and girls, with an increase of domestic abuse in some countries by the horrific number of 30%. SDG number 8 on decent work and economic growth. The global economy was already slowing, and with COVID, the world faces the worst economic recession since the Great Depression. So this is the last one, climate action. So I'm ending on a slightly less gloomy note. The global community over the past years has shied away from the commitments required to reverse the climate crisis. So the situation was already grave and continues to be. But COVID-19 has led to a 6% drop in greenhouse gas emissions, the silver lining. It's still short of the 7.6% needed, but it is better than what it has been. The question then becomes, what do we do about this? This unprecedented situation is having a long-term impact on the future of people and planet. Well, this is a photo of two of my bosses. I chose this photo not just because it's my bosses, but to really highlight the extraordinary importance of communication during a crisis such as the one that we're currently all living together. Both the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, and our Undersecretary General, Melissa Fleming, have prioritized this over the past months, focusing on people around the world as well as governments and policymakers. We've been communicating about the pandemic itself, but also about how it is even more important to act during the next decade to achieve the SDGs. We've been focusing on providing resources and guidance to policymakers to ensure that the crisis is dealt with using science and data. We've been sharing best practices in a timely manner, such as I'm sure you all saw the hand washing campaign from the World Health Organization, or information on how to identify and combat the increasing violence against women. And a major focus has been fighting misinformation. You'll see on the top right-hand corner of the slide a logo for what we call the Verified campaign. This campaign is to fight misinformation about the existence of COVID and how to deal with it, combat conspiracy theories and anti-vaccine, anti-mask wearing rhetoric. I really encourage you all to join this participative campaign. The URL is on the slide and I can share it with you afterwards as well. Anybody can be a part of it. The idea is to share verified information in order to fight misinformation. So clearly people are interested and people are listening. Interest in the coronavirus pandemic has led to a large and sustained increase in media coverage of the UN and traffic to UN platforms. What you see here is a snapshot of media coverage on the UN and the UN system. It includes the World Health Organization over the past year. You can clearly see the increase in pandemic-driven coverage, and it will spike again even more in a week when the General Assembly opens. So there's an average of 26,000 page views per day of our coronavirus portal alone since the start of the pandemic. Interestingly, and relevant to our conversation today, topics that combine COVID-19 and the SDGs are some of the most popular types of content. And what I'd really like to get across here is that in times of crisis, people tend to go to places where they know they can get reliable, accurate information. It drives traffic to the UN, but it's also an opportunity for publishers. People need science today more than ever. The UN Secretary General has said that the COVID-19 pandemic is more than a health crisis. It is an economic crisis, a humanitarian crisis, a security crisis, and a human rights crisis. Coming out of this crisis will require a whole of society, whole of government, and whole of the world approach driven by compassion and solidarity. In order to respond to this global crisis, the UN has launched the UN Comprehensive Response to COVID-19. As part of this response, the Secretary General is issuing policy briefs to provide ideas and tools to governments on how to address the consequences of this crisis. These, of course, are publications. And time to market, as you can imagine, is of utmost importance, as well as making them accessible and discoverable to as many people as possible. So departments, agencies, funds, and programs across the UN have been working together intensely to create and provide these relevant and timely resources. This has required working together even more closely, improving our workflows and our internal communications, even as we're all working from home around the globe in different time zones. It's been challenging. We have, however, managed to date to publish over 60 publications on COVID-19. We've made them very visible and accessible on the home pages of our platforms, the UN iLibrary and others, and author departments, including UN Women, the UN Conference on Trade and Development, UNDP, UNESCO, and UNICEF, as well as others, have contributed content to these very important reports. They cover a very wide range of themes, from the impact of COVID on women, to children, the elderly, refugees, and many others. And literally just 1 hour ago, maybe 2 now, the Secretary General just launched the updated edition of the Comprehensive Report on COVID-19, which I do recommend you look up. It includes new data and an overview of the policy briefs that have already been issued. So, as all of you can imagine, as publishers, our specific challenge was ensuring simultaneous publication across all platforms. Many of the policy briefs also had to be converted to EPUBs or even accessible EPUBs or translated into official languages. All of this takes time, which we didn't have much of, careful coordination, and of course led to lots of angst. Learned in Society publishers have a key role to play in this effort, in publishing fact-based, scientific information to help inform the public during the crisis and beyond. There has been significant impact of COVID-19 on publishers. In addition to adapting workflows, moving everything online, and adjusting to interruptions in supply chains and internet access, not to mention file sharing mishaps and even staff falling ill, we have all been affected by the sudden and massive move to online learning at all levels of education. The World Bank estimates that as of March 2020, school closures impacted at least 1.5 billion children and youth in over 160 countries. In this context, access to digital resources became vital. Publishers have had to accelerate their digital transitions or increase their digital capacity. Some have even opened up their digital platforms to support education, such as an initiative in Portugal, where educational publishers opened their digital platforms to allow close to 1 million students free access to digital learning resources. So back to the SDGs, and what can we do? We've learned through COVID how we can act collectively towards a common goal when we need to. We can protect each other by wearing masks. I wear a mask, it protects you. You wear a mask, it protects me. We can use this same approach for other vital issues such as climate change and the other SDGs. We have the roadmap. Now is the time to implement it. It is the decade for action. In just a few days, UN General Assembly 75 will open. It won't be the same as in previous years, and I, for one, will miss the energy and the excitement of the sudden road closures. Well, I'm sorry for all the New Yorkers out there. It is kind of exciting to be in the UN building. It's less exciting to be trying to move around the city during Anga, so I'm sure that many of you won't miss that. But it really was exciting to risk bumping into heads of state or even the last-minute requests for talking points for some of the speeches or requests for gifts for high-level attendees. It was a very energizing time at the United Nations and in New York. So it won't be the same this year because it will all be online, but it will be an important one. First of all, of course, it is the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. And secondly, it is taking place during a really unprecedented time. There will be recognition that progress on some of the goals has been slow, and that there's an urgent need to accelerate action on all levels and by all stakeholders. We will also consider the challenges facing member states as they respond to the COVID-19 pandemic and pursue a recovery aligned with the SDGs as we enter this decade of action that will be launched on Friday. But even before the start of this decade of action, publishers have stepped up in so many ways to contribute to the SDGs. Increasingly, publishers are using the SDG framework to categorize their catalogs, providing an easy way for booksellers and distributors to frame content in ways which will promote the SDG agenda. There's also more and more attention given to issues related to diversity in the publishing industry. Over the past couple of years in particular, there have been very public efforts to improve this area, which is encouraging and contributes directly to SDG 5 on gender equality and SDG 10 on reduced inequalities. And publishers are focusing more and more on producing content accessible to persons with disabilities, which contributes directly to SDG 10 on reduced inequalities. More and more publishers are signing up to the Accessible Books Consortium Charter. There are over 100 signatories to date. This is an initiative that is supported by the UN's Agency on Intellectual Property, WIPO, as well as IFLA and the IPA. Direct investments in education in developing countries are also taking place, such as the Pearson Affordable Learning Fund, to build quality, scalable education solutions for affordable educational services across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. So what else can you do? Well, the short answer is that there are many things that you can do and probably are already doing. So one of the main ones is publishing SDG content. There are a few examples on the screen. This is an important one that we've already touched on. Research must focus on the concrete issues that need to be addressed through the SDGs to serve as a tool for policymakers and support academia and civil society in making progress towards achieving them. Research provides a scientific framework and a foundation for the goals. It helps combat misinformation, which is more and more important today. And the international collaboration that often goes into research helps us to move forward together more quickly while taking into account diverse viewpoints. So a second main area publishers can help and are is in adopting sustainable business practices. Many publishers have already made clear commitments to reducing their carbon footprints. For some, such as Macmillan US or Hachette, these commitments have been in place for 10 years or more, leading to a lowering of carbon emissions of 50%. For others, Bertelsmann, for example, ambitious targets have been set to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. I'm sure that there are many other initiatives by smaller publishers as well. Obvious areas for publishing to contribute are, of course, in sustainable supply chains and production, using FSC or recycled paper, or going digital, although that is debatable given the carbon footprint of data centers. Reducing travel is another impactful contribution that can be made collectively by publishers and that many of us, including myself, are doing today by participating remotely in a conference. And there are also some more structured ways to become involved. At the UN, we have two important programs that I'd like to make you aware of. One that has existed for a long time, and a brand new one that I want to announce here today on Avant-Première to all of you. So starting with the one that already exists, it's called the United Nations Global Compact. So the Global Compact is the arm of the UN that really creates the link between the United Nations and the private sector. And there are many publishers that are already members. And I would encourage you to take a look and see if it would make sense for your organizations to become a member of the Global Compact. It provides a very useful framework to work from in order to make formal commitments to sustainable and equitable business practices. And so the one that I'm about to announce, the brand new initiative, is that we are launching the SDG Publishers Compact in cooperation with the International Publishers Association at the Frankfurt Book Fair this year. So I would heartily encourage all of you to join us in signing on to the 10 principles of sustainable publishing. They cover areas such as sustainable business practices, inclusion and diversity, and publishing SDG content that many of you are already doing, and we would be very happy to work with you much more closely in all of these areas. But however you contribute, it's welcome and it's important. And I encourage you to choose at least some of the goals and make sure you achieve what you set out for yourself as an objective. We don't all have to commit to all of the goals in order to make progress together. So another way that you can quite easily show your support of the SDGs and communicate about them is by using the SDG logo and the icons for informational purposes. One of the examples here is from the University of Michigan's online library platform. And I actually know for a fact that many of you already do this. You actively show your support by showcasing this logo and the icons. And we're actually very encouraged and inspired to see that in spite of the current crisis, in spite of all the hardship around the world at the moment, we continue to receive an average of 130 SDG permission requests per week. My team is mostly happily inundated by requests to be part of this global movement. And out of the 130 weekly requests, about 5 per week are for use in textbooks, so for educational purposes, which is very encouraging as well. We also know that you're publishing more SDG content. According to the Digital Research Report 2020, 10% of scholarly research in 2019 was conducted in topics related to the SDGs. And these publications become useful resources for a wide variety of people, from university students to other researchers, to policymakers, and on and on. So we are encouraged and inspired by what you as publishers have already done to support the SDGs, in spite of the recent challenges due to COVID-19, as well as the longer-term issues that we face, such as sustainable funding models for research, political uncertainty, and large-scale copyright infringements. We've learned during this difficult situation that we can work together to affect change and impact outcomes. And let's use that energy during the coming years to actually achieve our global goals. We can do it together. There's even a whole goal for that. It's SDG 17 on partnerships. So thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your commitment. And Manisha, I would like to pass the floor back to you for any questions.
Thank you so much, Sherri. That was absolutely fantastic, I must say. So we do have a few questions. I'm going to start with the first one from Susie Scommel, who is the President and CEO of BioOne. Susie says, Sherri, would you please clarify the difference between the sustainable goals with those of the regenerative movement?
The regenerative movement.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure I know what the regenerative movement is. Maybe the person who asked the question could clarify.
Susie, would you like to clarify? I think while we wait for Susie to clarify that question, how about we go to a question by Sarah Greaves. She says, if 74% of the world's population have heard of the SDGs, what can publishers and the publishing community do to increase access of content and drive accountability?
So I think it's really about doing more of what we're already doing. Increasing awareness goes through publishing content on the SDGs, as we mentioned, and improving access to content on the SDGs. And this can be in a very direct way, and obviously academic and scholarly publishers do this in a very direct way, but it also can be done indirectly through publishing books that are on the themes of the SDGs. So publishing books that, inspire people or give people tools as to how to improve access to education or how to have more inclusive work environments. So it can be direct research on the SDGs, but it can also be indirect. I also think that it's very important to make sure that the content that we do produce is available as openly as possible and in as many places as possible. I think that tagging research using the SDGs or content using the SDGs to make it more discoverable is also a really important way to do this. And just more, I think more of the same. I'm really very impressed in preparing this keynote today in some of the initiatives that I have seen done by the publishing community. There seems to be real engagement and sincere engagement for the goals. So yes, more of the same, please.
Perfect. Okay, so we have another question here from Astrid. I'd be interested to learn more about how the UN deals with transparency of the underlying data to its information in order to form strategies. For instance, how to measure the progress of SDGs. Are these stats openly available?
Yes, so most of UN data is openly available. It is quite dispersed and not necessarily very easy to find in some cases, but there's a very good portal called UN Data. We also do publish some data sets, some of the SDG indicators, for example, or gender indicators on the UN iLibrary. So it is very accessible to people around the world. And as I say, it also is combined in other data sets, for example, from the World Bank or the OECD. There really is a lot of data sharing amongst international organizations, which also contributes to making it very widely available and accessible.
Excellent. We have another question here from Nicola Jones. How do you think scholarly publishers can best help their research-based publications on topics relating to the SDGs to reach audiences beyond academia, e.g. policymakers?
That's a very good question. It's one that we struggle with ourselves. It's not always easy because it can be quite, serious content. It's not necessarily easy to get it across to the target audiences. In terms of reaching policymakers, I don't think that there's a silver bullet. I think that it's really the same ways that we make other content discoverable and available. There's no sort of special place that you can go to share content with policymakers. But, using some of the digital tools, the very powerful digital tools that we now have at our disposal, social media, places like LinkedIn, policymakers look at those places as well. So I think it's really about making content as discoverable and widely available as possible, and you will also reach those policymakers. And it's very important that we do. We do need to make sure that policymakers are getting the tools that they need in order to make informed decisions, particularly crucial at the moment, obviously, with the pandemic.
Excellent. And then we have another one here from Lexi Angelo from Calgary. She says, if we've reduced CO2 emissions during COVID, partly due to reduced airline/vehicle travel, why would we want to return back to in-person events and meetings that demand frequent travel?
That's a very good question. The only answer that I have is because I think that it's important to have in-person contact. I think that, we've learned through these 6-7 months of working from home now that we do miss seeing our peers, having in-person discussions. We have learned how to use online tools and I think have some very rich conversations online, but nothing really replaces those informal conversations that we sometimes have over coffee or over a drink or a dinner that we really can't replicate online. So maybe we can have less in-person conferences and try and really reason through our carbon footprint and the impact of our travel, but still having some conferences in person I think is a really important tool for all of us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Working from home consistently, I think this is one of the ones where I do look forward to an in-person meeting. That's for sure. That's for sure. Okay, we have another question from the lovely Sarah Greaves. So if so many people want information on COVID-19, what could and should publishers be doing to help support this level of interest and ensure they are getting access to reliable information?
Yeah, so access to reliable information is really very, very important. So it's really all about, it's about sources, it's about where you go for this information. As I showed it, people really do come to the United Nations because they trust the information that they get here. So even for publishers, the UN is a resource for everybody. So publishers can also use the resources that the UN produces to create their own content on COVID-19, on the SDGs, on any of the other, very wide array of areas that we publish in. So I would definitely encourage that as a reliable source and a primary source of information. And for publishers, again, the tools that we have, I think, are good tools to get the word out about what we're doing. So the communications around COVID-19 would be very similar to launching any other type of academic content.
Excellent. Okay, so we have another question by Arend Kuster. A slightly unfair but fun question. If you personally would pick one SDG for yourself to engage with, which one would you choose?
That is so hard. It really is. Because they're all interconnected, right? But I'm not going to give you the diplomatic answer. I will give you an answer. The first one that pops into mind is gender equality. It's something that I think is really very cross-cutting. It's an area that obviously affects me personally and something that I feel very strongly about. So yes, that would be the one that I would choose.
Good choice. Good choice. Okay, so Susie's back. She's provided some more information. She said, Daniel Christian Wall, giving back to the system, whether to the Earth, organization or culture, what is taken out? It's a step beyond sustainability. So as an example, planting 3 sisters, corn, beans and squash together so that the soil is not depleted and does not need to be left to fallow. This applies to city design, organizational functionality, etc., etc. So that's what she means by the regenerative movement.
Which sounds wonderful. Absolutely. I mean, it's just basically, it sounds like it's amplifying the SDGs, going one step further. So the difference is that the other difference, of course, is that the SDGs were approved by member states, UN member states. It's sort of the official path forward, but having other ways to positively impact and render the future more sustainable and even regenerate is even better. I mean, the more that we can do, the farther that we can go in these efforts, the better. So for me, these are very complementary tools that we have. And I think that, you know, the more trees that we can plant, the better it is. We can go beyond the SDGs and certainly aim for, you know, a more sustainable, and not just sustainable, but regenerated world going forward. So definitely something to encourage, and I will look that up even more. I'm very interested. Thank you.
Excellent. So it looks like we don't have any more questions at this point. I'll just have a look one more time. No, I think that's it. So there's nothing more in the chat function, or neither, and everything that you, all the questions that were open in the Q&A box have all been answered. So thank you indeed very much for that. So is there anything else that you would like to leave us with, or?
Just thank you. I mean, I'm very honored to have been here today, and very pleased to have had the opportunity to speak to you all, and encouraging you again to continue to work as you are on the Sustainable Development Goals and implementing sustainable business practices and publishing content. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me personally on LinkedIn, for example. I would love to hear more about what you're doing. And I wish you all a very, very good conference with this excellent program. So thank you all.
Well, thank you, Sherri. It really has been an absolute pleasure, I think, for all of us to hear from you. I know that when we released that you were going to be the keynote speaker, everyone was very, very, very happy and excited. So I think everyone will join me today in saying that that was a very poignant keynote. So thank you again. So shortly in your inboxes, you will receive a survey. We kindly request that you fill this out, as we can only make ALPSP events better when you give us your help and feedback. Also, please join us tomorrow for day 1, which is transparency and trust in scholarly communications, changing access, business models and funding. It's going to be a really good session. So that's tomorrow. It starts so UK time 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and that's 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock EST. And plus, there's still time to register for the ALPSP quiz hosted by the legend, that is Richard Giddy. So email events@alpsp.org to book. I think it's going to be a good one. And one last mention before we go: recordings will be available shortly. Please keep an eye in your inbox. And well, thank you everyone again for joining this evening, afternoon, wherever you are. Keep well, keep in touch, hashtag ALPSP 2020. So it's good night from me, and good night to you all, and keep well. Thank you very much.